Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Isa Planning Board for October 26th. A couple of housekeeping matters before we get going. If you're here on item 1, Mino Brothers, that has been adjourned, will not be heard this evening. If you're here on a matter that's marked public hearing and you'd like to speak, there are yellow cards in the back. I ask you to fill one of these out and submit it up front. We'll call you up during that hearing so you can speak. We remind applicants to please keep your comments to 30 minutes or less. And anybody from the community who'd like to speak, we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. That being said, I'll ask everyone to please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is 5150 Veterans LLC, PB 2022-026, west side of Veterans Memorial Highway, State Route 454, 311.2 feet south of Broadway Avenue, Holbrook, 0 Veterans Memorial Highway. Applicant requests 2 planning board special permits for a warehouse use and overnight parking of registered vehicles in the Industrial Corridor District pursuant to 68-466.1B and E respectively. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Katie Rivas. I'm with 5150 Veterans LLC. The address is 4155 Veterans Highway, Suite 13, Ronkonkoma, New York. Tonight we are applying for 2 special use permits and minor site plan modifications. Just to give you a quick project overview, this is a vacant site at 5150 Veterans Highway in Holbrook. The site's 5.07 acres. It's a vacant wooded lot. It's essentially the last vacant lot on Veterans Highway before the Sunrise Highway merge. The proposed square footage for a multi-tenant industrial building is 70,086 square feet. We're proposing to build 12 industrial units ranging in size from 4,500 to 12,000 square feet. Some of those units can be combined. It has approximately 15% finished office showroom. There's 1 unit that is 100% office. This is a speculative industrial development with no current tenants committed. The use will be industrial manufacturing light assembly. We anticipate about 80 full-time jobs will be created upon full occupancy. We are working with the town of Islip IDA to partner on this project. The resolution was unanimously passed on 8/10/21 at their IDA meeting for a proposed 11-year pilot program. We anticipate closing early 2023. Just briefly, the reasons for the special permits. The first one for the warehouse use. We believe this would be needed due to the industrial nature of the project and the likelihood that we attract warehouse users, e-commerce type businesses that would need to use a portion of their space as warehouse as opposed to just straight industrial use. The second special permit that we're applying for is overnight parking for 33 vehicles. They can be referenced on the outdoor storage plan. I believe you have a copy. If not, I have extras. Do you all have a copy?
I don't have a packet, no.
Okay. So that outdoor storage plan outlines nicely the 33 vehicles that we're applying for a special permit for outdoor storage for, the different types of vehicles, and their location on the site. Pursuant to that plan, all parking will take place in the rear of the site, concealed by landscaping from any major roads or neighboring developed sites. There's absolutely no outdoor overnight parking proposed along Veterans Memorial Highway. The van parking near Broadway Avenue is set back from Broadway with both evergreen shrubs at the curb line and a line of deciduous trees along Broadway, which effectively conceal the 6 vans sketched onto that area. So that's on the side of Broadway. We are also applying for minor site plan modifications, a parking relaxation for 6 spaces of the 142 required, which equates to a 4% relaxation, which we believe is minor. Additionally, we are applying for a minor front yard setback along Broadway, which is the requirement is 50 feet. We are providing 40.8 feet. This is a secondary front yard setback, essentially, since the main front yard is Vets Highway, where we comply with a required 100-foot setback per code. In general, we believe both the special permits and minor site plan modifications are reasonable and necessary for a feasible speculative industrial project. I also have Mike Marinas from BBV here. He is the site plan engineer for the project. He can speak briefly about some of the engineering issues on the site plan and can field any engineering related questions. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll be brief. My name is Michael Marinas. I'm with the engineering firm of Barapinacci and Van Weel, 175A Commerce Drive, Hop Hog, licensed professional engineer in the state of New York. Just briefly, we've been back and forth with the town on this site plan for several months. We've had 3 rounds of comments that we've successfully addressed. I think planning will agree. Most of the comments had to do with site landscaping and access, and demonstrating that the truck turns and emergency vehicles can circumvent the property. We made application to DOT for the 2 curb cuts, which we show along Vets. One is right turn entrance only, the other is right turn entrance only with a right turn exit only. And we have 2 proposed curb cuts on Broadway, which is a town-maintained road. So all the applications and comments have gone through the town with regard to access along that road. We did do a traffic study that was for this project as well, which was reviewed by the town, and that concluded that no significant impacts to the roadway network would be a result of the project. And the other point that I wanted to bring up is that we've made application to the health department for on-site sewage disposal systems, and it hasn't been finalized yet, but that process is going as well. We have reviewed the covenants and the conditions, and there were no issues. There was one question about the requirement for connecting to the neighboring Sunoco gas station. I just wanted to point out that I guess if that's required, we would probably have to add a couple land bank parking spaces to accommodate that. There's also a small slope between the two, so there might need to be some tweaking of grades between the 2 properties if that were to ever occur. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on the site.
We'll come back after public hearing and staff report. Anything further from the applicant? I don't have any cards. Anyone who wishes to be heard on this application? Did anybody come in late who wishes to be heard? Not seeing anyone. I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak to give us a report.
Thank you, Ms. Yeah, it's long enough. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located on the west side of Veterans Memorial Highway, approximately 300 feet south of Broadway Avenue in Holbrook, and it's currently vacant. The applicant is proposing to build a 70,000 square foot industrial building with a mix of uses to include office space and general industrial uses, which will include some warehouse space and the overnight parking of registered vehicles. There currently are no prospective tenants for the building, therefore the exact space dedicated to a warehouse use and the exact number of registered vehicles to be parked overnight is unknown. The applicant has provided a plan showing the maximum number of vehicles to be parked overnight, which is 33, and a truck movement plan, which shows they can maneuver in the spaces indicated. Each of the tenant spaces also have overhead doors into the units to indicate that any of the spaces could be converted to warehouse use when necessary. All the overhead doors are in the rear of the building and have some visibility from Broadway. The building itself will require a front yard setback variance from ZBA for setback along Broadway Avenue and will require a 19% parking relaxation from this board or 19 stalls. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which require significant landscaping along Broadway Avenue to screen those overhead doors and the overnight parking from view.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. Brown?
Oh, yes, for the applicant. You mentioned connecting to, you mentioned the Sunoco gas station.
Okay,
What
yes.
what was that you were
So
mentioning?
that's in reference to the planning board special permit conditions, site plan modification conditions, item number 3. your board proposes that the owner agrees to offer permanent cross-access and shared parking in perpetuity with the property owner of 5140 Veterans Memorial Highway.
So that requirement is from the ICD code. So if you take a look at the zoning code for the ICD, it says that properties are to offer access to adjacent parcels. And you didn't show it on your plan where you wanted to provide it, and you didn't ask for the relief for it, so that's why it's written in there.
But this is not adjacent to the Sunoco gas station, correct?
It is. There's a sliver of land that Sunoco owns that is being used to monitor like a previous oil spill, so they don't actually have the piece of property between us and Sunoco, while it's owned by Sunoco, is not fully developed as part of the gas station. So you couldn't drive a car to provide cross-access, because you'd be going over this monitoring area. So in reality, it doesn't appear to be adjacent, but the property owners are adjacent.
Okay.
Mr. Ruggieri?
Just basically a clarification of the code on the, is that just an offer of cross-access? Oh, it doesn't have to actually be a dedicated cross-access? Just the offer, okay. Because in this particular case, I don't know whether it would be appropriate to have, a connection between a Sunoco gas station to an industrial park. There might be cut-through traffic that becomes a problem in both directions.
I don't know how the code's written, but I think you guys might be able to waive it, or they might have to go to ZBA to ask for that, the way it's written in the code.
Okay,
Because it is listed in the zoning code as a requirement, but I
As lo-
don't know the exact verbiage.
yeah, as long as it's just an offer, then I'm okay with it.
We can also request a waiver. I was unaware until I received these a couple days ago, so.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People pulling in to get gas instead of coming out the right way, you take shortcuts to it.
And then I just wanted to clarify one other item. Kelly, you had mentioned 19 parking relaxation. I think it's 6.
He's got access.
You're not permitted to count the parking stalls where you're parking those vans, and I believe you used about 14 stalls for the van parking?
So it's not at the site data where there's required and provided.
Correct.
Do you minus the-
You did 142, but when I counted the actual open empty spaces, I got 123. I believe what your number is coming from is you put van parking in parking stalls, and you just can't count those toward the parking requirement because they're for the overnight parking of the vehicles. So it will be 19% or 19 parking stalls relaxation.
Okay. I mean, because it's a speculative building, we're just applying for the likelihood that there would potentially be a tenant that would use outdoor storage of vehicles for overnight parking. So there's a chance that there's none on site. So it's they're not.
Regardless, I mean, the staff is recommending approve with that relaxation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, the conditions that are attached, your client went through and agreed to them all?
I'm the owner and I agreed to all of them. I just had the one question on the cross access, just from a safety standpoint.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to ask Mr. Colgan just to explain your options on that.
So in order for the planning board to waive that requirement, it would need to be listed as part of the call. It's possible you can come back to get it lifted. I can see with the town attorney if simply an offer just to get out of the way is appropriate, because I think we're all on the same page. It's probably not realistic. Or we can see if the zoning board, which you're going before anyway, can waive it, in which case you just go back to one board. We'll try to keep it as simple as possible.
That's fine. Either one is fine.
Or alternatively, we can reserve tonight and rehear the hearing.
No, thank you.
Agreed.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
No,
Is
thank
there a
you.
motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we close the hearing and grant the application subject to the CNRs being executed.
Motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Town Board application, public hearing, Miguel Garzon, CZ 2022-004, southeast corner of Brentwood Road and Second Street, Brentwood, 1785 and 1779 Brentwood Road. Applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with 4752 to permit the demolition of the existing building for an office use. Site plan modifications may be required as part of this application. Good evening, Ms. DiNicola.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Appearing on behalf of the applicant, Eugene L. DiNicola, 200 Railroad Avenue, Sayville, New York. The applicant is requesting a termination or modification of previously imposed covenants and restrictions, Town Clerk number 4752, to permit demolition of all existing improvements on the site in order to construct a new office building. Now, the subject site is located at the southeast corner of Brentwood Road and Second Avenue, Brentwood. To the north, across Second Avenue, is a Checkers fast food burger restaurant as part of a shopping center, which includes a Popeyes chicken restaurant, Gala Food Market, La Espaguita Bakery, satellite stores, soccer center, etc. It is zoned Business 1 District. To the northwest, northwest, across Brentwood Road is a Chase Bank, M&T Bank. There's an Antiquity Lodge and, of course, other retail businesses in that area. To the west across Brentwood Road from the site is a boarded up building which formerly was an office for family medicine medical use. And to the south of that closed building is a single ranch style dwelling. To the southwest across Brentwood Road at 3rd Avenue is Casa Vieja Restaurant. And adjacent to that on the west, on 3rd Avenue, is a medical office building, zone GST. The restaurant is zone Business 1 District. If you went to the east, it's abutting the property on the east is a Cape Cod restaurant. That's on the south side of 2nd Avenue. And then a church called the Church of the Nazarene. Of course, it is in Spanish. Adjacent on the south is RV Realty. That's immediately adjacent, and that's at the northeast corner of 3rd Avenue and Brentwood Road. And it's ARVY Realty and Cruzel Realty, and that is zoned Business 1 District. Brentwood Road, as we know, is a well-traveled north-south arterial roadway. Brentwood Road traveling north and south. If you travel north and south along Brentwood Road, it has a mix of commercial uses, residential uses, shopping centers, gas stations, etc. If you went the length. The subject parcel contains approximately 36,900 square feet of plot area. It has a street frontage on Brentwood Road of 264 feet and on 2nd Avenue approximately 122 feet. It has presently erected thereon two-story frame dwellings and a detached frame garage. There are presently 4 curb cuts on Brentwood Road and 1 curb cut on 2nd Avenue. Now, the applicant proposes to demolish all of the existing structures and improvements existing on the subject property and erect a 2-story office building. I submitted exhibits for the board. The first page is the site plan colorized, and then the balance of the pages of the exhibit are the elevations of the proposed office building to be erected. The office building will contain 3,000 square feet on the first floor, 2,952 square feet on the second floor, and it will have a 2,952 square foot cellar. Now, the cellar will be strictly for mechanical equipment and storage. No office space in the cellar at all. Elevations of the proposed building, as I indicated, are on your package that has been submitted, and they also have been submitted to the planning staff for review and have, to the best of my knowledge, been approved as presented this evening. The subject premises are zoned GST presently. pursuant to a town board resolution dated August 17, 2006. The resolution granting the change of zone to GST was subject to certain covenants and restrictions to develop the subject parcel for a restaurant with an accessory apartment. The CNRs, among other restrictions, limited the use of the subject parcel to the restaurant and 1 3-bedroom apartment above. The number of seats in the restaurant were limited to 46. The number of persons that could occupy the apartment was limited to 5. The covenants and restrictions limited the hours of operation of the restaurant and the maximum size of the building to 3,735 square feet, again, for a restaurant with an apartment above. Now, the site was never developed for the restaurant and the apartment. The applicant intends to develop the site with a well-designed office building with attendant parking. The office building, as noted on the site plan, will be located on the northerly portion of the property with the parking extending south. The site will have 1 full-service curb cut south of, it's on Brentwood Road, 1 full-service curb cut on Brentwood Road, approximately 200 feet south of 2nd Avenue. There will be no curb cuts onto 2nd Avenue. The site will maintain a 25-foot buffer adjacent to any residential use and will be well planted. The floor area ratio for the proposed building is approximately 16.5%, whereas 25% is permitted. The site will contain 31 parking spaces, whereas 30 are required. Now, as indicated, the site will be extensively landscaped. The landscape area of the overall site, excluding the buffer, is 28.9%, or some 10,628 square feet. And in the front yard, we'll have 18.6%, or 6,853.9 square feet of landscaping. I wish to point out to the board, however, that the proposed building will require a height variance due to the cupola, which is on top. If you look at the exhibit, it has a height of 46 feet, whereas the permitted height is 35 feet. Also, actually, the ridge line of the roof on this building is 35.5 feet. The applicant attempted, or I believe, has done a fine job in trying to match the architecture of the building, clapboard siding, shingle roof, gable style roof, gable appearance with the existing dwelling that is presently on the site, which is in such poor condition that it just can no longer be used and has not been used. There are benefits here. The proposed project, if approved, will provide a higher and more stable tax base for the town and the Brentwood School District. Construction jobs will be created, and a modern office space will be available very close to the business district, which is just north, looking at the business district, if you will, Brentwood, at the intersection of Suffolk Avenue and Brentwood Road. I respectfully request that the application be approved and the modification be granted. Now, the planning staff and I have not resolved or discussed, in fact, covenants and restrictions for this particular project, as I believe planning on the planning board to hear this matter prior to offering or proposing any covenants and restrictions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you. We'll go to the public hearing. We'll go to staff report and come back for comment. Peter Ward.
Hello, I'm Peter Ward. I'm a member of the Brentwood Historical Society, and I'm here because some of our members expressed concern about the demolition of this structure because of its historic significance. the structure was listed in an inventory of historic buildings and has a strong connection to the early history of Brentwood. For instance, the family that first lived there also constructed the Episcopal Church, which is still standing right down the street, as well as the Octagon House, which is right across the street. And they're all sort of a community of historical buildings. And we even have a photograph from 1892, which shows the structure, and it looks very similar, pretty much the same as it does today. And so we were just hoping that the owner of the building might consider preservation or talking with a member of the Historical Society and seeing if something could be done besides demolition and possibly preserving the structure. And I won't take too much time, but there's also a lot of publications that reference the family that lived in the house. For instance, the people who first built the house and their children were involved in the community life of early Brentwood, building the cemetery, the other buildings I mentioned, as well as being involved in a lot of 19th century social movements. But I guess basically that's all I have to say. I have some images of the historical building, but I just wanted to ask the owner if he would be willing to discuss the historical significance of the building. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have photos you want to submit for the record, we'll take them.
Okay.
Those are the only cards I have people on the public comment side. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes to demolish an existing house approved for a mixed-use building that was built back in approximately 1870 and replace it with an office building. Prior to this, the property had been the subject of a change of zone to General Service T back in 2006. The covenants at that time required that the existing residential design and architecture of the structure shall be kept. Any additions shall blend with the existing design and shall consist of the same roofing and siding materials. This was due to the age and unique features of the building. The applicant submitted an engineering report explaining the unfeasibility of salvaging the existing building. The building division has reviewed the report and felt that a site inspection is warranted to verify the claims in that report. The proposed elevations are generally contextual with what is existing at the site now. The board may wish to consider adding other defining features such as a turret that's on the existing building. It should be noted that, as proposed, this building would require height variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So to that extent, I don't know if there's any guarantee that, the vision that we have before us now is what they'll be allowed to build. That warrants further discussion. This conceptual site plan exceeds the landscaping requirements and also complies with the parking requirements. But the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision to allow the building division to complete its review prior to bringing this back for a decision.
Thank you. Ms. DiNicola, the one question that was posed, and I think you submitted the study which the building inspector wants to go out on, you're saying it would cost too much money to actually.
In anticipation, Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to the situation regarding the house on the property. I think it's referred to as the Shutt House, and that house, 1785 Brentwood Road, has been referred to as an historic structure. However, upon information and belief, and I believe to be correct, the structure has never been formally declared to be historic or placed on the Register of Historic Places. It's not in a historic district. However, it was listed in the building's structure inventory form prepared by the planning department in about 1975. The structure is in a complete state of disrepair, and I had a professional engineer, the applicant had a professional engineer inspect the house. A detailed report was submitted to the planning staff, and to the best of my knowledge, I believe planning wants to have the building department inspect to confirm the consulting engineers or professional engineers report regarding the condition of the house. As I indicated, it's in a complete state of disrepair. The applicant has, however, if you're looking at the elevations, incorporated design elements of the existing structure. Now, there's nothing we can do with the house. It is falling down. The porch does not have a foundation. It has black mold. If you read the report, the cost to rehabilitate the house and bring it back to its original condition, again, this is the engineer, not me, $1,770,000. So I think it is completely unfeasible to attempt to save that house. But the applicant has put in the gable design over the front entry, which imitates the front entry of the existing dwelling. The cupola has design elements of the house. A great deal of effort and cooperation with planning staff has been expended by the applicant to design a building which would maintain a unique architectural appearance for the site and the community. I discussed the engineering report and its extensive review of the house, of the dwelling structure, and it's such that, again, $1,756,000. I want to correct that, which is an unfeasible sum of money to try to rehabilitate the dwelling. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Frugieri? Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Di Nicola, I have just a clarification. It looks like this application is comprised of 2 lots.
There are 2 parcels. There's 1785, I believe, and 1779. There are 2 houses on this.
2 houses. That's what I see. On the aerial, I see two houses, but you're only talking about one being demolished, or are both going to be demolished?
Both being demolished.
Both.
Yeah, but
So we're
the
only
one on the
discussing the
south- one on
historic
south-
house.
I'm sorry.
We're only discussing the historic house, but
That is correct. Well,
but
the
as
house
part of
had-
this application, 2 houses would be demolished
the
to
old
accommodate
house.
the site plan.
Right, the old house.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Madmore?
I need to recuse myself, Mr. Chairman. I represented Mr. Garzone, maybe on some of these applications, but I think it's inappropriate that I participate in this application. Thank you.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
So, Ms. Nicole, I guess we're going to wait to hear back from the engineering staff when they go out and take a look at the structure itself and compare it to the report that you submitted. And then we can go from there. What is your proposal if this goes to the zoning board and they do not approve the height variance you need?
Well, let me be very confident. I believe they'll approve it. It is a cupola. It is a design element. If the board grants if conditions are agreed upon with staff and the board approves this application for the modification of the CNRs, I feel the Board of Appeals, excuse my confidence, will approve.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mr. Frugieri?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close this public hearing and reserve decision on this application pending the building department's report.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to reserve decision. Close public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions were reserved.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, and Mr. Board. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Town Board application, public hearing, Eric Romer, CZ 2022-025, southwest corner of Sunrise Highway, State Route 27 and Sycamore Avenue, Oakdale, 4490 Sunrise Highway. Applicant requests a change of zone from Business 1 to Business 3, a Town Board special permit for a gasoline service station pursuant to 68-302C, and a Planning Board special permit for a convenience market pursuant to 68-302.1D. Site plan modifications are required as part of the application. Good evening, Mr. Guardino.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
May I begin? Wait, okay.
Yeah. Why don't you turn it around so those that are here on the application can see it? We have the packets here.
Good evening. Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Anthony Guardino. Ominous. Okay. Good evening. I represent 7-Eleven, which is seeking a change of zone from B1 to Business 3, is also seeking a town board special permit for a gasoline filling station, as well as a planning board special permit for a convenience market, and certain site plan modifications, all relating to its proposal to construct a new 7-Eleven's convenience store and gasoline filling station at a site located at 4490 Sunrise Highway in Oakdale. For those who are familiar with the site, a portion of this site is already improved with a 7-Eleven. There's actually a 7-Eleven on the site today. I have with me tonight Zachary Chaplin from Stonefield. He's a civil engineer, as well as Amanda Rosa, who is a traffic engineer also with Stonefield. And Ken Bordieri from 7-Eleven is here as well to answer any questions the board may have. The property that is the subject of the application is approximately 51,835 square feet. It is a lot that is located on the southwest corner of Sunrise Highway and Sycamore Avenue in Oakdale. The property will be leased, or a portion of the property will be leased to 7-Eleven. It represents, again, about an acre and a half, or slightly less than an acre and a half of a 3.38 acre lot that is owned by 7-Eleven's landlord. The site, as I mentioned, is currently zoned B1. It is improved with a 2,643 square foot 7-Eleven convenience store. The site is surrounded by commercial uses to the east. There is a strip center, Lidl, and a Rite Aid, I believe, in that center. There's also McDonald's with a drive-through to the east. To the south, you have a multifamily residential use, and to the east, you have the balance of this overall parcel, which is vacant, is currently vacant. And then across the street, across Sunrise Highway and across the two service roads, the north and south service roads, you have other commercial uses, but they are quite a distance from this parcel. 7-Eleven is seeking to improve the site by demolishing the existing 7-Eleven convenience store that's there, replacing it with a new and modern 3,990 square foot convenience store and a gasoline filling station that has been configured with input from the planning department. The concept of convenience stores, as you probably know, has evolved from what I think the industry called at one time Cokes and Smokes into what they now refer to as, to now allowing people to grab a made-to-order sandwich or a hot bowl of soup or a cup of gourmet coffee. The 7-Eleven today is not the same as the 7-Eleven of the 70s and 80s. Here, the new convenience store will be about a third larger than what's there today in order to provide the new food offerings and other facilities that the market now demands from convenience stores. But the site will also be enlarged from currently it's about 30,000 square feet to almost 52,000 square feet in order to allow for the addition of the 6 gasoline dispensing pumps plus the enlarged store. The new 7-Eleven building will be a significant upgrade from the existing 7-Eleven store that I would say is tired and outdated, both functionally and aesthetically or architecturally. It is one of the older stores. It will also, the site will also have a total of 35 on-site parking spaces and significant landscape enhancements along both road frontages, both Sunrise Highway and Sycamore Avenue. If you're familiar with the site today, there's almost no landscaping along the frontages.
The proposal will meet all of the dimensional criteria for the special permit for a gasoline filling station, as well as the locational requirements, meaning it's not within 200 feet of a church or a library or a school or a recreation area. The site also meets the criteria for a convenience market, which is that it has to be on a site with a minimum of 20,000 square feet of lot area. The proposal also meets and exceeds all of the applicable dimensional requirements for a gasoline filling station and the accessory convenience store in the B3 district, with the one exception that we will need a variance from the zoning board for the setback for the canopy. The gasoline pump canopy is too close to Sunrise Highway, and we will need a variance from the zoning board. The proposed site plan that is before you will also require, by our estimation, 2 site plan modifications. One is the minimum depth of landscaping along the street frontage. 8 feet is required. As you can see on the site plan that's in your packet, the minimum distance now is 0, but that's a little misleading because of where the property line is located in relation to the pavement of Sunrise Highway. So there's actually quite a bit more landscaping. It's just not on our property. It's going to be in the right of way. So while I'm telling you it's 0, it's when you look at it, it won't be 0. And then the minimum off-street parking requirements are not met. There are 40 spaces are required by a building of this size, and for these uses, we are providing 35 spaces. You're going to hear from Amanda LaRosa in just a couple of minutes, and she'll explain how the 35 spaces, or why the 35 parking spaces will be sufficient to accommodate the 2 uses. And Amanda will also summarize the favorable recommendations, and I should say conclusions, from the traffic impact study that she prepared and submitted to the planning board. And I will also point out that she will respond to comments that we received just today from LK McLean with regard to some traffic issues. So she's prepared to address those. But before I call Amanda, I would like Zach Chaplin to come up and explain the site plan to the board. I could do that now. Thank you.
Good evening. Just for the record, my name is Zachary Chaplin, last name Chaplin, with Stonefield Engineering and Design, located at 584 Broadway, Suite 310, New York, New York. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New York, and I've testified in front of this board many times beforehand. So I'll be brief, just kind of going over a couple topics that I think are worth noting on this application. I think just from a layout standpoint, one of the things we wanted to look at is we understand that, there's residential areas to the south of us. So the building is a great way that it acts as a buffer. And then, of course, we have 35 feet to both the building and the trash enclosure to provide that buffer. That's actually partially for the reason that we need the variance on the canopy setback, is because we wanted to provide a substantial landscape buffer. This is something we discussed with planning. But also, I think a big part of that is the building itself acts as a buffer, and really all the activity is facing the service road, specifically, the gas pumps. In addition, I think just based on the existing conditions today, this is just a significant improvement of a site plan. Whether it's the access, right now, the existing condition, the curb cuts are very, very close to the corner. We're able to shift the curb cut on Sycamore south to kind of space that out better. I think the internal flow is a major improvement. We have sizable drive aisles that meet modern standards that you're starting to see in a lot of the newer 7-Elevens that have been built in town. We have a lot more parking spaces than there are today. There's a dedicated loading area, trash enclosure, downlit lighting that'll meet the town's dark sky requirements, and of course, a significant landscape improvement, because there really is none today. And I think just overall, the site is pretty sizable for a 7-Eleven, and I think it can accommodate the items that we're proposing. So we'll kick it over to my colleague to speak about traffic.
Good evening. I'm Amanda LaRosa with Stonefield Engineering, also at 584 Broadway, Suite 310, New York, New York. My firm had prepared the traffic impact study in connection with this application, and I do understand from the letter that was transmitted today from the town's reviewing engineer that the previous version of the report was reviewed by the town's consultant engineer. We did update the report, and it's stated today that'll be included in the submission items that Mr. Gordino had passed forward. There were basically minor changes related to updates to the site plan that had been made with close guidance from town planning staff. So regarding the traffic study, I'd like to talk briefly about the impact to traffic generation. As you are familiar, the site is already a 7-Eleven in the existing condition. So we are anticipating that the convenience store's customer base is already visiting the site. So the increase in traffic that we're forecasting is really related to the additional offering of gas. And based on the site's configuration and location on the service road of Sunrise Highway, we are expecting that the majority of traffic to the site will be based on traffic that's already traveling on the service road and is just now attracted to the site because of the gas offering. From a traffic perspective, again, we did look at accidents at the adjacent intersection to provide a safety analysis. I understand LK McLean has reviewed that, and they are in agreement that there aren't any significant safety issues related to traffic at the site. Based on industry standard data for parking demand rates in support of the request for a parking variance, we did look at rates for convenience stores and convenience stores with gasoline stations. We're anticipating a maximum parking demand of somewhere between 22 and 33 vehicles. So therefore, we do expect that the 35 spaces and the additional 12 spaces at the fuel pumps will sufficiently support the needs of the site. Regarding the access on the state highway, we have made an initial submission to the DOT. We've gotten their feedback a bit. We do have some outstanding comments that we intend to address in the next resubmissions. I also am aware that LK McLean made a comment regarding the number of driveways on the highway. We do feel that providing 2 access points is beneficial to site circulation, especially with the addition of fueling pumps. Basically 2 places for cars to enter will give drivers more options. If the egress driveway has a car at it, it might be more beneficial to enter the site at the ingress driveway to the west. So we do maintain that 2 site access points are beneficial. The spacing is in accordance with state guidelines on driveway spacing. And again, the DOT has seen the site plan and has not brought up the same issue. That concludes my testimony. I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Before you sit down, we do have a couple of questions here, Mr. Ruggieri.
One of my major concerns about this application is its proximity to the Sunrise Highway exit ramp. And have you evaluated the weave between the Sunrise Highway exit ramp and your first driveway here? Do you feel that's a safe weave distance?
So the first driveway we're not actually expecting will be, you'll be able to access from the off-ramp. The first driveway is intended for the 2 through lanes of traffic on the service road. That driveway is almost exactly where the lane ends. So we would expect that people coming from the main line of Sunrise Highway would either use the eastern driveway or would turn down Sycamore and into the site off of the driveway on Sycamore.
So, yeah, you're just anticipating that the traffic wouldn't take that movement. But in reality, people do make those movements if it's there. If it's there, people will take it. And that's my concern, is someone might make that quick weaving movement into there, creating a hazard with the cars traveling westbound on the service road.
Understood. I'm happy to provide a weaving analysis and evaluate the distance.
Have you
from it.
considered moving that entrance further to the east, or even suggesting a Jersey barrier along the exit ramp to prevent that weave movement?
So a barrier on the exit ramp, I'm not quite sure the feasibility. Exit ramps are controlled by the Federal Highway Department, so that would be incredibly involved
Westbound,
process.
yeah, that's what I said. move the exit, moving it east, isn't it? Oh, move it west, yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
moving it to the west.
Yeah, moving it to the west.
So it's currently located as far to the west as possible along the site's frontage. So do you think that it's optimal location for the
Doesn't-
property's frontage?
Does the
that
applicant
exists?
own the adjoining parcel?
The applicant doesn't own the property. The DOT has a control of access line to
Right.
the west of the point where we're actually proposing the driveway. The control of access essentially is the state's way to buy the rights of a property to develop an access point. They do this to control movements near a ramp. So we've basically located as far west as possible to have access on this parcel at all.
Has the DOT reviewed this plan?
They've seen, not the exact plan, but they have seen an earlier version of the plan that's in front of you as part of our initial DOT submission.
And did they accept that weave movement?
Yeah, they made no comments about the driveway itself, just that the driveways would have to meet the DOT spacing requirement, which they do.
I just want to clarify, so the adjacent property is not owned, I'm confused by the presentation. The adjacent property is not owned by the applicant? The landlord? I thought Mr. Guardino said it was owned by the,
It's owned by the same
landlord.
property owner, and 7-Eleven is leasing a portion. But to the point about moving, we still can't move the curb cut, even though there's land there. We don't have a lease over that land, and we can't move the curb cut any further west because of the DOT restriction.
Mr. Bruno?
I'd like to follow up on that, Mr. Cordino. That's actually the question that comes to mind. The total site is 3.2 acres. We're being asked to consider rezoning of the entire 3.2 acres since there's no subdivision line, and yet at this point, you're only using 1.2 acres. So it begs the question, and what happens to the other 2 acres?
Again, I mean, if we have to seek a subdivision, we would seek a subdivision. It's right now, it's one parcel.
Yeah.
So I know that the town doesn't like us to, doesn't encourage partial rezonings, and we
Right.
need to.
But when you B3 has a lot in it, and so, if it was a business one, it was a typical, but B3 has a lot in it, so I have to say I have concerns about that other 2 acres. I mean, I don't disagree with you, just so you know. I don't disagree with you. I live not very far from there, as a matter of fact, and that is a tired 7-Eleven. I don't want you to think that I have a problem with your development, but I am looking to the future on it and just do have some concerns as far as that goes.
Yeah, I'm sure that, if need be, if the board is not inclined, the town board ultimately is not inclined to rezone the entire piece, if we have to also submit a subdivision application, we'd have to consider that, and that might be the way we have to proceed.
Thank you. We're going to go to public hearing if you're finished with your presentation. Oh,
Yeah, I have one concern that follows up with Mr. Bruno's discussion. I go by the site all the time. It is a busy site. It is one that, we love the idea, of course, of its renovation, replacement, et cetera, and upgrading it. The one concern that I wanted to mention is I've noticed in going by there at least 3 or 4 times a week or more, the number of trucks that park out in front of the 7-Eleven along that space. And they go in, and you're right, and I think it's quite clear that they go in and they get their lunch and they keep going east with their trucks and they're moving produce, and all that is a good thing. What isn't a good thing is I hope that the parking of trucks along Sunrise Highway Service Road can be planned on and eliminated properly, because I notice it every time I go by. There's usually 2 and maybe 4 trucks parked in front of 7-Eleven on the service road. No place else for them to go if they wanted to go to the 7-Eleven. Lidl has just come in and is doing a lot more business in that shopping center. So and that's good too. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But I just wanted to mention it so you can take that into consideration, particularly with the gas going in, which looks like a great improvement. But it's got to be planned out. And I second Mr. Bruno's concerns with regard to the property, and we're all sort of scratching our heads with regard to the rest of the land. But just wanted to pass that along. Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Guardino? We'll go to public hearing, then we'll go to a staff report and come back for further questions. I have Lisa Shub.
Hi, good evening. I don't have anything officially prepared. I'm a neighbor. I live at 9 Victoria Court. I am right off of Sunrise Highway. I'm the first development. It's a cul-de-sac. Our side property is going to be extremely impacted by the overdevelopment, I believe, of this proposal for the 7-Eleven. Not to mention, yes, the 7-Eleven has come in disrepair. It's a little dirty. It's not kept. There's litter. There's, it's just, it does need an upgrade. I don't see the need for the gas station, being that there is a gas station less than 1 block away. The overdevelopment encroaching on a residential area, to me, is not acceptable as a mother, as a resident. There's a shopping center. There's a market. There's a bagel store and deli. I don't know why the need, again, for, throwing thousands and thousands of gallons of gasoline into the earth with the potential to leak, the fumes, the potential to totally desecrate our land, the little wooded areas we have left. There's thousands of vacant buildings, commercial buildings, all over Sunrise Highway. To upgrade the building and make it nice and clean and modern, wonderful. To stick, 35 parking spots with lights, blasting at our neighborhood, our peaceful residential neighborhood. I think it's unnecessary. I think it's frivolous. And if the person that's leasing the 7-Eleven now and maintaining it, I don't trust, if it's in that much disrepair now, I don't trust that he would be capable of maintaining a beautiful new building. And that's about it. I'm concerned about the dumpsters in the back. I'm concerned about rodents. I'm concerned about, again, the traffic is ridiculous there now. I don't see how putting 2 entrances as the Sunrise Highway exit comes blasting out, like you said, sir, if there's an opening, people are going to take it. They're not going to think twice about blasting over there with the commercial traffic, with the town, the DEC, the water, the cable, and everybody else parking all along there. The McDonald's parking lot entrance is a disaster in itself, trying to, weed through the parking lot to get out onto Sunrise Highway. I don't see the need. Did you say something else? Oh, yeah, and our property in the back is DEC protected, approximately half an acre because of the sump on Oakdale Bohemia Road. Okay, we're not allowed to build there to maintain the integrity of the ground, of the land, of the trees, and of nature. And I don't see how this, can take precedence over, our residential property, that he's allowed to have a rezoning to make a shopping mall. If he only develops, one part of this property and you grant him the rest of the 3 acres or whatever it is, what's in the future for that? You're going to put up another, a pizza place. You're going to put up a movie theater. Things tend to snowball, and I just want to, express my concern. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Larry, is it Meistelman?
Bastelman. Very simple argument. It's going to be want versus need, right? Do we really need another gas station in the area that we live in? Resounding to me, it's going to be no. Right down the street, you have a Shell gas station. You go a little bit further down, there's a mobile gas station where the car wash is. And guess what? A little bit further down the road, guess what there is? A 7-Eleven gas station. Do we really need another gas station? So we're talking about traffic. What we're not talking about is environmental impact. That I haven't heard. What is it going to be to put in 6 pumps of having gas in there? When we talk about traffic, there's going to be accidents. There's no doubt in my mind there's going to be accidents. People fly coming off the exit ramp. They're going to see there's a gas station. I'm going to move to go over. As Lisa was referring to, McDonald's is always a hot mess with the amount of traffic that goes in there at all hours. A lot of people, especially later on in the evening, are lining up, and also early in the morning because they're grabbing breakfast, whatever it may be. So I think you're going to find potentially accidents happening. Environmentally, we don't know. And do we have any on record right now what the impact is from an environmental standpoint by putting in 6 gas tanks? And what that could do to the area from an environmental, I don't know. The argument, which was a little bit shocking to me, was we don't really think we're going to have that many more people coming into the store just for the gas. So if we're really not going to have that many more people going into the store, why do we need to put in gas? Now, I can understand they want to upgrade. That I'm all for, but putting 6 pumps of gas in a residential area, to me, is ludicrous. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I think it's dangerous. From a garbage standpoint, there's a homeless person living inside of their car, goes back and forth between the Lidl parking lot and obviously 7-Eleven. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure of going in there, because I know you say you obviously live in the area. There's garbage strewn all over the place. It's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse by bringing in more traffic. So once again, I just don't understand the logic behind it. I don't think we're going to have more people coming in because of the gas. Why build the gas? You want to upgrade the store? That's great, because guess what? There's the same upgraded store right across the highway because they already built it. There's a brand 7-Eleven that's been, what, a year, 2 years? I don't even know how long. Why do we need to put gas stations in? So that would be my ask, as you guys representing us, is to vote no. Do not allow for them to put. If they want to upgrade it, that's one thing. Putting in 6 pumps of gas, I think, is a foolish mistake. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Dawn Mikowski?
Good evening. I'm a resident there 23 years. My home is 3 houses away from 7-Eleven. When I first lived there, the woods was a disaster. I would call Town of Islip to please help me and clean it. About a year and a half ago, Keep Islip Clean called me to volunteer my time to clean that woods. And I did. On my day off, I met a nice lady that does a lot for Keep Islip Clean, and I cleaned it. I now have a neighbor diagonal from my home that cleans that area once a month. Here are the pictures of what the area looks like. As of tonight, I drove past coming here. It's been a week looking like this, and it's a disaster. You all could take a bus. We all could go on a bus trip right now, and we'll see the disaster of what these people do to our neighborhood, our community. Yes, I'm concerned, very concerned, because McDonald's is a mess with garbage. 7-Eleven is a mess with garbage. The rodents, okay, it's going to be bad. All right, my neighbors here, they've been talking about the congestion. It's a nightmare. People have to quickly come off the merge. I have pictures here from above. Look at the merge and where 7-Eleven is. Okay? You look at this merge. It's so dangerous. They better not have that opening so that people from the merge can get into 7-Eleven. It better be way before, which I know they have. I saw the plans. They have 2 openings on Sunrise and 1 on Sycamore. And the one on Sycamore, right turn only into our community. More traffic. And that is right across from where McDonald's comes out onto Sycamore. Okay? You know, these people come out. When do they come and look? At 9 a.m. when rush hour is over? Are they looking at, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night when rush hour is over? It's a nightmare. They don't live there. We see it. Okay? There is that home. Okay? So we have a gas station a block away on Ocean, maybe less than a block, with all retail stores. These people, 7-Eleven, has all residential area. Okay? The house behind 7-Eleven, it's ran by AHRC, Special Needs Adults. I have a good friend of 52 years that lives there. She's surrounded by woods. If that 7-Eleven has a fire because they're making hot dogs, just like the gas station just went up on Sunrise by Southern State over the summer, if that goes up, their home is surrounded by woods. How are those people getting out when their driveway is just in and out? Okay? What if a gas explosion? How are those people going to get out? Even Victoria Street. They got all the woods there. All right? The debris is out of control. It's not very good. All right? But we don't need another gas station. They all said how they felt. I feel the same way. And I don't know about our property value. Is that going to ruin our property value? We take pride in our homes there. If you go there, our homes are beautiful. We have a beautiful community. And then you have retail come in and they keep it disgusting. Disgusting. So I don't know what to do between the construction, fumes in the air, gas leaks. It's a worry, a real worry. I hope you could take these pictures.
Yes,
and
please
look.
submit them. We'll make them part of the record. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Francis Weinstein.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I live one block behind this proposal. I'm about 300 feet south of it, and I've been there for 39 years. It does concern me. The traffic is terrible now. Every morning when I go to work, it's like you had described with the trucks parked all over. They're not just on Sunrise. They're down on Sycamore. It takes me quite a while just to peek through all the parked trucks and cars just to get out onto the Sunrise Service Road. So that is a huge, major concern. McDonald's backs up. People getting in on the drive-through, that backs up. So between the two, it's going to be more of a nightmare. Plus, there's going to be so many more people coming in with there's a gas station, and a lot of people are going to be coming off the exit ramp saying, "Oh, I need gas," and just darting over. There's already been accidents over there. There's one night I was coming home and there was a SUV totally upside down, and all I could think of is it probably tried to cut over and flipped. And in the 39 years that I've been there, it's only gotten worse. And I believe the way 7-Eleven is now is making it worse. There's another concern. We have a really bad raccoon problem back there and other wildlife, opossum, rats, whatever. And when you clear out the area like that, it just gets worse. They just move into I have 2 acres. So it moves into my property especially. And the fumes concern me. I know that when the gas station is going to be operational, we're going to be smelling that. It's going to be probably, I would think it's going to be open quite late at night. That's a big concern. I believe it would attract not so favorable people because it is going to be open late. And the group home that Dawn was talking about, some of those people, they're Down syndrome, how do you get them out in an emergency quickly? Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Please consider our petition. Oh, and I have petitions signed, lots of them.
Thank you. We'll take that, make that part of the record as well.
Thank you.
Jim Padberg.
Thank you.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Jim Padberg. Would it be okay if I asked the applicant to turn the easel? I want to point out a couple things.
Sure.
if the easel could face the board. Okay, as the one of the members already pointed out, so this is the curb cut. I mean, this is the off-ramp for Sunrise Highway. What's not shown on this rendering is this should be called a Hail Mary curb cut intersection. You'd have to go back about a decade, but there was an application to develop this site, and the DOT already ruled that they wanted to make the curb cut adjacent to where this curb cut is, and they said absolutely not. And the board was able to say, okay, you know, the DOT put the nail in this coffin. It's not up to us. The DOT killed it. So what do I mean by a Hail Mary curb cut? Everybody that goes west on Sunrise Highway that's gone off from the service, gone onto the service road to try to go into Best Buy, the big lots, when you try to make that cut, you're like praying that you're going to be able to make it into that Best Buy shopping center. There's one even worse than that. So when you go past Manor Lane and now you're trying to go towards the Southern State, everybody just prays. So I have 30 years of experience trying to patronize this 7-Eleven. This is an existing curb cut, pretty much where it is right now. This is a Hail Mary to try to get over to here to the point where after 30 years of experience, I'm never going to try to do that again. There's somebody pointed out about the success of Lidl. Lidl has been doing great, better than Best Market, better than Wallbounds. So this project was killed even with less traffic, not considering all the extra traffic that's here right now. So in closing, this curb cut will not meet DOT. And I think this is an out for the members of the board to say the DOT is never going to approve this because they're not going to let you put Jersey barriers or anything right there. And it is a challenge just to get into this curb cut where, you know what, it's not worth getting into an accident. I don't try to make this curb cut when I want to patronize 7-Eleven. I don't make this turn onto Sycamore. It's just not worth getting into an accident. I go all the way down to Lidl and then come back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Joan Shapiro?
Good evening. Hi, my name is Joan Shapiro, Woody Lane, Oakdale. I've lived there since 1980. I have to tell you, I fear taking Sycamore Avenue from my home to get onto Sunrise Highway. Anytime you try and get there and make a right, and I don't blame the truck drivers, that, like you said, they're there on that portion of the road. Okay, you can't see the curve of cars coming. Okay, you sometimes can't even see the traffic that's coming off of Sunrise Highway. And I can't tell you how many times, and I don't consider myself that old that I'm going to sit on the brake. Okay, but you can't see the traffic. You literally are taking your life in your hands. Also, I'm sorry. Over here. Oh, I'm sorry. Over here on both sides, the truck drivers come and they park there and there so that they can run into 7-Eleven or even McDonald's because they have the big trucks so that they can get whatever they need. Okay, and that makes barely one person to go back and forth. So you're sitting there waiting for either someone to come down so that you can go up, or you go up and they're sitting there trying to make the curve. Okay, and it really is terrifying. Okay, and this entrance here is, if I can see it, it's almost exactly across from McDonald's. So you're going to have people who are sitting trying to get into McDonald's, to get in there, to go to the drive up. Okay, as well as people coming in and out of here. Our kids still ride their bikes up to 7-Eleven, okay? And that scares me. And I have to tell you that the people who are in 7-Eleven, they have been good merchants. I think they're a good friend to the community, but that really has nothing to do with the traffic that's going to be there, okay? And there is a large section of woods that I see that they're going to appropriate to use for the back. I understand that. But that's AHRC. Those people can't handle that type of noise or the traffic, okay? And the garbage that's going to be coming out. Right now, they're a nice community, okay? They're a nice house and they're safe, okay? And that really worries me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Those are all the cards I have. Did anybody come in later wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes to demolish an existing convenience market and construct a new convenience market with a gasoline service station. The existing store was constructed back in 1965, according to town records. The Business 3 zone is generally acceptable along Sunrise Highway. However, the subject parcels are located in close proximity to the exit off of the primary highway onto the service road, raising safety concerns for motorists needing to slow down and get into the site. There's also proposed egress in close proximity to Sycamore Avenue, increasing the potential for vehicular conflict. The traffic study was submitted and reviewed by the town's traffic consultant. In the consultant's report, he stated that it is recommended that a single driveway on the South Service Road be provided for right turns only into and out of the site. This driveway should be located as far from Sycamore Avenue as possible. The conceptual site plan shows complying overall landscaping and a 5-stall parking relaxation if the entire site is taken into account, inclusive of the vacant area. It does not meet the required 8-foot landscaping strip along the front yard and Sunrise Highway, as stated by the applicant. And as stated by the applicant, the canopy and pumps do not meet the 60-foot front yard setback. The board will have to weigh the increase in intensity with the current proposal due to the gas station, with the aesthetic and potential access improvements that maybe we could arrive at if this application should move forward. Based on that, the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Guardino, let's talk about where you are in the process with the state. The state has approved the current, or it's still there for review?
So the state permitting process is a 3-stage application. The first stage is a conceptual submission, which we have made over a year ago. The second involves engineered plans, which at this point, the application is pretty early on, so we haven't made that submission yet, but we fully intend to address all the comments that they've issued and prepare the plans.
Thank you. Mr. Guardino, can you just speak to, I know the question about the environmental, what goes into who has to review the state, county in terms of putting in gas pumps?
The county has control over the underground storage. And I was going to point out that obviously we will be meeting all of the applicable requirements. We have to, of course. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I mean, it sounds like it could be a kind of a sexy argument or a convincing argument, but the fact of the matter is we have to comply like every other gas station. So I don't foresee any issues with that.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing. I think there's a big difference between gas stations that were built 20, 30 years ago. The regulations are different. 7-Eleven does double-walled tanks, 24/7 monitoring. It's a much improved underground tank storage than you might see 20, 30 years ago. So it's way different, the gas stations being built now compared to some of the older ones.
Question, Mr. Brown.
Yes, I'm going to agree with my colleague, Mr. Ferrajari, in reference to that curb cut. Coming off there, and I've frequented the 7-Eleven, I've frequented, I shouldn't admit it, but the McDonald's quite often. But to come off there and try to come across, even to go to McDonald's, it's a challenge. It's sometimes, it's worth your life. And I'm going to tell you, I've been beeped at before trying to get over to McDonald's. With the curb cut there, I just don't see it working. Further to the west, like Mr. Ferrajari suggested, because also you have trucks that do park on Sunrise Highway right in front of 7-Eleven. So somebody trying to come off, somebody, as the woman pointed out, coming out and making a right onto Sunrise Service Road on Sycamore, they have no vision of anybody coming across that ramp trying to get to McDonald's. And I think that creates a dangerous situation. So I would be interested to see what the state has to say with that curb cut there. But my suggestion is, if this is to have any credence, is to move that as far west down the highway where people get off Oakdale Bohemia Road to come into here. And I would agree with some of the speakers from the public tonight that the site could use a facelift. It is a tired old 7-Eleven, and it really could use some landscaping in that, clean up the area.
That's the objective here. With respect to the curb cut, though, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. The state's going to control this, right? I mean, if it's dangerous, they're not going to allow it there. So I think we have to let that process, run its course, and then, the board obviously could have its own thoughts, but I think we need to see what the state is going to say with regard to that. But as Amanda mentioned earlier, we really can't move the entrance, that curb cut can't go further west because there's a no access zone that the DOT has imposed. So this is as far west as it can go, and we'll have to see what the DOT says, whether or not it goes east.
According to Mr. Patberg, there is a history of, they did turn down an application, which I've been here for 14, 15 years. I don't remember that application, but maybe there's a precedent from them.
And maybe because there's a no access zone further west, and that might have been why the DOT took the position and killed it,
right.
Because it's they can't get it. Exactly. You want to say something? Yeah.
I just want to point out one other thing. So, since this is a gas station, we do need to provide fueling deliveries. And I think one of the things we really looked at was the truck turning for that. So it definitely is, an easier route for the truck to be basically pull it on Sunrise, do the fueling, and then pull out back on Sunrise rather than having to use the curb cut on Sycamore. That can be very challenging. It's entering that side street that we prefer it not to. So the idea of two curb cuts is very beneficial for the trucks that need to enter and exit the site. And I want to reiterate, we looked at DOT mapping. There is a line restriction that does not permit any curb cuts west of where we're showing our curb cut. So our curb cut is as far west as possible on Sunrise that DOT will permit. And we've confirmed that with them.
Further questions from the board?
Can I
Mr.
would just
Guardino,
like
go
to
ahead.
just follow up on one other thing. I know that, Mr. Brown, you mentioned about it being dangerous, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I heard from the, and I heard from the public as well. I just want to point out that in the memo that we received this morning from LK McLean, the town's own independent traffic expert, they pointed out here that it says here, crash experience in the vicinity of the site of the past 4 years has been minimal. So while it may appear dangerous and but the accidents have not been happening according to them. It says here the proposed redevelopment is not anticipated to have detrimental impact on crash experience. That's the town's expert saying that. Again, I don't live here. I appreciate what you're saying, and I understand what the public is saying, but the facts, the data doesn't seem to support what they're saying about how dangerous it really is today. So I just want to put that on the record. If I could just address a couple of other things. What I heard from the public here, and obviously, I appreciate what they're saying, and it sounds like they don't want a gas station. That's what I'm hearing. We're hearing about, fumes. Gas stations you don't have fumes from gas stations. You don't have explosions from gas stations. They're worried about the people who live in the group home and what's going to happen to the people that are adjacent. I mean, you can't, they're trying to create a doomsday scenario. I just don't think that's realistic. I don't know the last time there was an explosion at a gas station in the town or anywhere on Long Island for that matter. Some of the people who spoke, I mean, I wish I had said exactly where they lived. Some people did point out where they lived roughly. I think Ms. Schaub is the closest at 9 Victoria Court, but she lives all the way to the west of the court. Like we're not building next to her. That's going to remain vacant, at least for now. We don't control that. That's all the way to the west. The concern about litter and what the woods look like, I would submit that if the building and the site is expanded, it's going to be landscaped and used, and there'll be an obligation by the operator to keep the site clean. So I would argue that the site will actually be cleaner. If there's a litter problem because there's vacant land where no one is living, where no one is using the land, that will not happen once a business comes in. Obviously, 7-Eleven doesn't want their site, littered, and they will have a maintenance obligation, I'm sure, pursuant to the town's covenants, to make sure that the site is clean. We talked about the environmental. I do want to also point out that people are concerned about, the building being right there. The town, while this application, when it was first submitted, had a sufficient buffer as per code, which was 25 feet to the residential to the south, the town planning staff pushed us pretty hard to actually move the building further north and to increase that buffer. So that buffer will actually be 35 feet. Instead of 25 feet. So it's actually going to be more than is required. It will be landscaped. And as Mr. Chaplin mentioned, that, the building will act as a further buffer. The consequence of that, of course, is that it's pushing everything forward closer to Sunrise Highway. And that is one of the reasons why we're going to need that relief from the zoning board. But that was a trade-off. And, 7-Eleven ultimately agreed with planning staff and said, look, it makes the site better. We also lost a little bit of parking, and that's one of the reasons why we need some of the relaxation. But again, the trade-off was, planning thought that, lose a couple of spaces and pull the building further away from the residences to the south. And my client agreed to do that. I don't think, for the same reason why I don't think there'll be litter on the property. If there is a raccoon problem or a rat problem, that the animals that are living in the woods there, that would go away if the site is improved. I think that's it. That's pretty much it.
So I'll just echo the concerns of my fellow board members on the traffic issue. I was raised by one of the residents tonight. I know traveling west, getting off to go to that Best Buy or that Big Lots over there, what that's like. And I grew up basically where the merge is with the Saginaw Coast Parkway or the Robert Moses Causeway, which is probably one of the worst. And there are accidents there all the time. And this may not be as bad as those two, but it's certainly high up on that list. So I welcome to see what the state's comments are back to you.
Yes.
I also just wanted something that Mr. Bruno brought up, the remainder of the property. I would be hesitant to rezoning if we were to approve this. The entire property, which goes further back into the residential area, would not know what's going to happen. So I would be really hesitant to do that. And the last thing, which is just a pet peeve of mine, something that you said that just always gets me going and gets me annoyed, is that only if we approve a larger building will the landlord who owns the rest of the property where the litter is will then clean that property. If the trash is there now and the landlord owns that property, they should be cleaning those extra lots.
Well, no,
And-
but yes, I agree
and I'm
with
looking
you.
at these photos here that were submitted, and I'm seeing this trash that's out there, and it's on those properties. It shouldn't be only if, in fact, we grant you a larger store to go there that will start cleaning it, and that's wrong. I mean, they're supposed to be neighbors to the neighbors that are living there. They're supposed to be members of the community and taking care of that property regardless if something's on it. They own it, and it's a little disingenuous, or to come here and say we'll only clean that property.
But don't misunderstand. I agree with you. I don't represent the landlord. I don't know the landlord.
Right.
I only know that my client is 7-Eleven. I can tell you that 7-Eleven will keep this site clean once they lease that portion. That was my point. Not that.
I understand,
not
but it's
that it should
it's
be
a benefit
bigger.
to the landlord who'll be charging your client more money
Well,
to
that's
actually have
true.
that property.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's,
And he should be cleaning the site. I agree with that.
so I mean, that's certainly.
But I think 7-Eleven will do a better job.
No, listen, and I speak to the fact that the newer 7-Elevens that we've approved,
Yes.
corporate 7-Eleven has some stricter policies in terms of cameras, in terms of loitering, in terms of, trash cleanup and the rest, and they've been consistent with that with the new ones. But, I mean, the concerns certainly in terms of the traffic, the remainder of the property, and, the landlord who's not currently keeping it clean, to come here and ask us to allow him to make more money. It's maybe not your client, but certainly who your client's renting from. So I just put that out there. I hate when applicants come
I
in and
hear
talk
you.
about that and say, if we do this, then we'll clean it. Well, somebody owns it now and they're not
Again,
cleaning it.
I don't represent the landlord, so I hear you, though. I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Are there further, Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask Ms. LaRosa, there was a new 7-Eleven with a gas station built not too far east of this site. I think it's down by about Johnson or Lincoln. Is it Johnson? By Zwanga Passeri. Yeah. It's just, yeah. My question is really simple, I understand that traffic studies are usually, and they're speculative, what you're saying as far as what the traffic will produce. Did you look at that one to see what the actual situation is there? Because it's just been built, it's got the gas pumps, and it's on Sunrise Highway, so I would think that might be some idea of, a better idea of what the traffic expected could be.
We did not, partially as a symptom of timing. That was actually active after the study was initially drafted. What we looked at as far as trip generation was we counted the existing site to quantify just the convenience-related traffic, and then we used industry standard data to project the increase in traffic associated with the gas use.
And Mr. Brennan, if I could can you just explain, because I know one of the residents asked that question, there is going to be an increase in traffic to the site, it's just that it's passing by traffic, correct? You're not drawing new traffic? There's the
That's
question.
right, yeah. So
Can you
we're
explain that?
basically saying that the convenience customers, the convenience store is already there, so the customer base is already there. We're not expecting new traffic just to go get, a cup of coffee. We're expecting that the newly added traffic will be primarily associated with the new offering, the gas. And gas stations typically attract customers who are already on the road. It's pretty rare to leave your house, go get gas, and go back home.
Ms. Ruggieri.
Just to expand on the chairman's question, in reviewing your trip generation numbers, it looks like you anticipate a little less than a doubling of trip generation in the AM peak hour, and then a little more than doubling in the PM peak hours. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Anything further from the board? Would you like to add anything further? I know I cut you off there. You're okay.
Nope, I'm good.
Mr. Ward, do you know anything further? Yeah. So obviously, we need still some clarification on this. That being said, is there a motion? Mr. Moriarty?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd make a motion to close the hearing and reserve decision this evening, give the opportunity for the applicant to address some of these traffic issues and working with DOT.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Is that, let me go with Ms. Cruz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions were reserved. Thank you. If any of the residents would like to know where the status of the application is, we can grab Mr. Colgan's card and try and keep you informed as to how it's progressing. Thank you. Next item on the application, site plan modification decision item, John Bolson, SP 2022-010, south side of Main Street, State Route 27A, 38 feet west of Willow Avenue, Islip, 584 Main Street, applicant requests parking, landscaping, and buffer relaxations in connection with a change of use for an existing 2.5-story dwelling to mixed-use building for office space and 5 apartments.
Good evening,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Chairman, members of the board. For the applicant, Tom Abate, ABB ATE. I'm an attorney with offices at 88 Sunnyside Boulevard in Plainview. I have additional site plans. Do you want me to hand them up, or the ones you have sufficient?
I think we're okay. We have enough.
Okay, very good. So this is a continuation of our June 8th hearing before you, wherein our proposal was, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. It's a third of an acre site in the GST zone. It's got 3 structures on it. One is devoted to a hair salon, one is a vacant building, and another is a detached garage. And our proposal was to take the vacant building and establish mixed use, a combination of offices on the first floor and 5 apartments total. To accomplish that, what we had proposed to you were site modifications, which consisted of removing the detached garage, changing the Main Street access. We currently have access on Main Street, but it's 2-way. We were going to convert that so it's for ingress only. We were going to create a cross-access with Meridian Lofts, which is the residential building next door, also owned by the Bolsons, and use that as our egress from the site, creating a pocket park on the premises, and continuing the south side evergreen screening, which is along the Meridian property, all across the southerly border, not only to beautify it, but to create a further buffer between us and our residential neighbors to the rear. There was an aspect of the plan as we proposed it at which you balked, and that was the proposed creation of 2 parking stalls in the front yard. You expressed reservations because you felt it to be out of character with that which we find in the downtown, perhaps create an adverse precedent, and for that reason, it has been excised. It has been removed from the site plan that you have before you. The town's consultant, in reviewing it, suggested that we create a pedestrian access between our property and municipal lot number 7. However, Michael Marinas from BBB, our project engineer, noted and provided the tax map to LK McLean that we do not abut municipal lot number 7. So that recommendation was removed by the town's consultant. In anticipation of tonight's hearing, because that's pretty much what we had suggested to you. That was our case. Mr. Gonzalez today gave me the draft conditions. I've reviewed them with my client. We are in full agreement with them. They included, amongst other things, a formal cross-access agreement between our property and Meridian Lofts for not only the egress that I just mentioned, but for parking and for use of the existing refuse container by both buildings. Further suggested a shared parking agreement between those properties and lots which we own, which the Bolsons own, the BRG lot across the street, as well as the Tellers lot. And then there were miscellaneous landscape requirements as to species, caliper, height, as well as augmenting street trees in front of the premises. Again, we assent to virtually all of those things. I have Mr. Marinas here with me. I also have Mr. Jeff Lazarchek, our project traffic engineer, as well as Mr. Kurt Bolson.
You want to?
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This application was last heard at a public hearing on June 8th. Decision was reserved at that time to have the applicant submit the traffic and parking study to the town's independent traffic consultant for review to vet the requested parking relaxation for the project. As stated by the applicant's representative, outstanding concerns and questions at the time of the hearing were the degree of parking relaxation, the deficit of parking stalls on site, and the vehicular conflict point at the Montauk Highway ingress with the 2 front yard parking stalls. Those 2 front yard parking stalls have subsequently been removed from the proposal, which staff supports. R&M Engineering, on behalf of the applicant, worked through all comments by the town's traffic consultant, and the following was provided in general terms for the project in their final memo. The combination of on-street parking, municipal parking to the southwest, and other parking owned by the applicant on the north side of Main Street is sufficient enough to accommodate the slight deficiency of parking stalls based on the peak demand of all uses. As stated by the applicant's representative, there was a pedestrian access between this property and potentially a municipal lot to the southwest as a recommendation, but it was discussed and it's not feasible because the 2 properties are not adjacent. There is actually a separate private property of the building next door that abuts this property, so you can't connect the 2 parking lots, but they already have a pathway alongside their building that goes from the municipal lot to Main Street. It's just a little farther over. So it's already there. Another one's not necessary. Although the numerical relaxation is high on paper, given all the factors for the project and surrounding area, there will be sufficient parking. Additional measures will be implemented, which can be seen in the conditions, such as cross-access and shared parking with 16 Willow, a shared parking agreement in perpetuity with the applicant's 2 lots on the north side of Main Street, as well as bike racks on site and the presence of public transportation along Main Street. The mixed-use nature of this project for this downtown area in Islip is a good use, and given all the aforementioned parking information, it does have merit. So based on the above, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Mr. Moriarty?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. You indicated that there was not going to be a dumpster on site?
No, what I said, we're going to share the dumpster that exists at Meridian Lofts. So
Okay.
when Mr. Gonzalez put forth the conditions, so when I said that we would engage in a formal agreement, we own both, even though they're in separate
Right,
entities.
right.
So it would be not only for the egress, but for the parking and for the use of the dumpster.
Okay, got it. That's the question I had.
Yeah, so it's
How are you
threefold.
memorializing that? So you're going to have an agreement, well, actually, you've got both owners, but you'll have an agreement between the 2 properties to
Correct.
share.
And the way it will be drafted is that it will run in perpetuity. So even assume arguendo, Mr. Bolson conveyed one of the lots to someone else, that agreement would survive.
Yeah, that's my concern. Okay, I'm fine. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
Thank you. Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Nothing.
Is there a motion? Anyone? Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we grant the application subject to the CNRs being executed.
It's a motion by Mr. Brown to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Town Board application, recommendation item, Captain Permit, Michael Arado, CZ 2022-023, southwest corner of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, and Second of Lane, West Islip, 750 Montauk Highway. After requested change of zone from Residence AA to General Service T in order to permit a medical office. Site plan modification is also requested as part of the application. Good evening. Did you want to make a presentation or want me to go to staff report?
Just wait for
Mr. Colgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was previously heard at the October 12th hearing. The primary concerns raised at that hearing were site upgrades. The staff reviewed the site plan with traffic safety and the Division of Engineering. Traffic safety indicated that the site access is optimally located where it currently is to limit vehicular conflicts with incoming vehicles from Montauk Highway. That leaves no plausible room for a vegetative buffer to the south. However, there is a significant stretch of bamboo that exists on the neighboring property. The staff has recommended a new opaque fence be installed along where the bamboo is, given that there's no ample room to plant a plausible buffer. In addition, it should be noted that a substantial amount of landscaping will be added to the front yard along Montauk Highway. Given the improved aesthetic appearance that the property has existed as a doctor's office in its current capacity for many years with no known complaints, office zoning currently exists across the street on the eastern side of Secatog Lane, and that this lot is no further into the residential area than that lot across the street. The staff has no objection to the application and recommends that the board grant the application subject to the attached covenants and restrictions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Just one question. CNRs have been agreed to?
Have the covenants and restrictions been agreed to?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Have the covenants and restrictions been agreed to?
I just got those, you sent me today, right?
They were just sent today. They are standard boilerplate, so I wouldn't expect any significant deviations. If the owner has an objection to something under the purview of this board, we could bring it back to the next planning board. But again, it's boilerplate, so I wouldn't anticipate any objections.
So it would be subject to the covenants and restrictions being executed. If not, you'd have to come back. Okay. Any further questions? Is there a motion? Mr. Matamore?
Yes, I move to grant the application subject to those covenants and restrictions being executed.
It's a motion by Mr. Matamore to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions being executed. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Cruz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Motion? Mr. Moriarty. So move to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions? We're adjourned.